You are making $115,000 a year. You hate your job, you hate the politics, the schedule, the corporate nonsense, and you think the solution is to become a real estate agent? Look, I need to say this clearly. This is not financial advice. I am a guy on the internet tracking corporate mechanics, not your certified financial planner. Do your own math. But here's the problem I see everywhere. You are making six figures and you're still broke. Not literally broke, maybe, but trapped. Your income is high, yet your freedom is zero. And the scariest part? You think the solution is to swap one job for another job? That is not a solution. That is just trading one cage for a slightly different cage. I am Tom, and this is Tom Thinks. I'm here to cut through the Wall Street jargon and give you the real talk on your money, even if it hurts your feelings a little bit. If you are someone who works hard, earns a great salary, and still feels like you're running in place financially, hit subscribe and give this video a thumbs up. The income illusion trap. Here's the thing that nobody tells you when you land that six-figure job. Earning a high salary does not make you wealthy. It makes you a highly paid renter of your own time, and the system is designed to keep you in that exact position. Look at the person from our first research source. They make $115,000 a year, which is more than most American households earn combined, and yet they feel trapped. They hate their job. They feel like they cannot leave. They are considering becoming a real estate agent, which is a commission-based job with no guaranteed income, just to escape the golden handcuffs. You see the irony here? The income that is supposed to provide security actually creates dependency. Because when your entire financial survival depends on a single paycheck from a single employer, you are not wealthy. You are a highly paid hostage. Now, here's what most people do not realize. The financial industry tells you to save 15% for retirement, buy a house, and wait 30 years. That is the retail advice. That is the plan for people who want to be comfortable, not wealthy. Meanwhile, the top tier of earners, the people making $100,000 a day instead of $100,000 a year, are doing something radically different. They are not optimizing their salary. They are building systems that produce income without their direct labor. The difference is not about working harder. Research Source 2 makes this point powerfully. The people making six figures a day are willing to look stupid. They are willing to take risks. They are willing to ask an unlimited number of people for what they want. But the average six-figure earner is terrified of looking bad. They are terrified of losing their status. And that fear keeps them chained to the desk. So the first trap is simple. You confuse income with wealth. You think a high salary means you have made it. But a high salary with high expenses, high taxes, and high lifestyle inflation is just an expensive treadmill. You are running faster and staying in exactly the same place. The prestige trap origin. To understand why smart people stay broke, we have to go back to how we were trained to think about success. And this is where Research Source 3 from Carmen Van Kerkhove is absolutely devastating. She talks about the prestige trap. Elite education, she argues, does not teach you critical thinking. It teaches you conformity and repackages it as superiority. Think about what happens when you go through the system. You get good grades, you get into a good college, you get a good job, and you're told that this is the path. But here is the dirty secret. The path is designed to produce reliable employees, not wealthy owners. The entire structure of modern credentialing, from the Ivy League to the MBA, is built to create people who follow rules, who seek approval, and who trade their time for money. Van Kerkhove talks about sitting in a Columbia seminar where her classmates could quote political theorists but could not ask a basic question about why the United States was even in Kosovo. They had mastered the performance of intelligence without the substance of independent thought. And that is exactly what happens to high earners. They are brilliant at optimizing within the system. They negotiate raises, they climb the ladder, they upgrade their lifestyle, but they never stop to ask the fundamental question, why am I trading my time for money when I could be building something that pays me regardless of whether I show up? Prestige trap runs even deeper than that. Research Source 3 highlights how wealthy families were willing to bribe their way into elite colleges, even though their children already had access to the networks and opportunities those colleges promised. Why? Because they were buying a story, a badge, permission to tell people their child belonged. And here is the connection to your six-figure salary. You are doing the exact same thing. You are buying the story that a high salary equals success. You are spending money on the status symbols that prove you belong, the nice car, the bigger house, the private school for the kids. But all of that keeps you dependent on the paycheck. And the moment you question the story, you are met with the same scandalized reaction that Van Kerkhove got from her sociology professor colleague. How dare you question the value of the path? Because if the path is broken, then everything you have sacrificed to walk it was wasted. And that is a truth most people cannot face. The hidden extraction loop. So what is actually happening to your money? Let us walk through the extraction mechanics, because they are brutal. First, there is structural inflation. Research source 7 lays out the math on Boston's housing crisis. But this applies to every major city in the country. Boston added tens of thousands of high-paying jobs in tech, biotech, and healthcare. But for every job created, they built a fraction of a housing unit. In some years, it was 3, 4, even 5 jobs per one new home. What happens when you create high-income employment without matching housing supply? Prices explode, and the cascading effect is vicious. The person making $200,000 who would have bought new construction in the Seaport is now competing for brownstones in the South End. Person from the South End pushes into Jamaica Plain in Dorchester. The person from Dorchester gets priced out to Quincy or Malden, or they leave the city entirely. So your 6-figure salary does not buy you stability. It buys you a spot in a bidding war. And this is not just a Boston problem. This is a structural feature of every high-growth city in America. You are earning more money, but the cost of the most essential asset, housing, is rising faster than your income can keep up. The second extraction mechanism is lifestyle inflation. Research source 4 from Julie B. Rose talks about how, for most Americans, as their income increased, their lifestyle crept upward. The pressures of the American dream, keeping up with the Joneses, the urge for bigger, better, more, she had to fight back against that pressure deliberately. She saved, scrimped, and side hustled because she had a taste of freedom. Most people do not do that. Every raise triggers a corresponding increase in spending. The third mechanism is the tax system. If you earn your money through a W-2 job, you are taxed at the highest marginal rates on your labor. You pay income tax, payroll tax, state tax, and then you spend what is left on things that are also taxed. Meanwhile, the people who own assets pay lower capital gains rates. They borrow against their assets rather than selling them. They play a completely different game. But here's the psychological trap that keeps it all hidden. Research source 3 talks about how elite education insulates people from evidence that challenges their superiority. The same thing happens with high earners. You are surrounded by other high earners. Your entire social circle validates the path you are on. You never meet the person who skipped college, built a business, and now makes more in a week than you make in a year. So you have no reason to question the system. You just assume that working harder and earning more is the only way. But it is not. It is just the only way you have been shown. The process arbitrage system. Now let us talk about the alternative, because this is where we move from the trap to the solution. The core concept is what I call the income to asset arbitrage. The wealthy do not optimize for salary. They optimize for systems that produce income independently of their time. And one of the most accessible models for this is what I will call the creator flywheel. Research source 6 is a perfect case study. This is a writer who self-published books and turned them into a 6-figure passive income stream. The mechanics are worth understanding because they apply to almost any knowledge-based field. Here is how the arbitrage works. With a traditional publisher, the writer received about $1.50 per book. By self-publishing, they can make up to $12 per copy. That is an 8 times increase in margin. But the real magic is not the margin. It is the compounding. Each book becomes an asset that pays repeatedly. The writer did not start making significant money until their 5th book. Each new book drove sales of older books. The audience they built for one book carried over to the next. So what looks like a slow start is actually a compound curve. Now, translate this to your situation. You have skills. You have knowledge. You have a professional network. The question is whether you're selling that knowledge once through your salary or packaging it into assets that pay you over and over. Research source 5 shows this pattern with successful women who became breadwinners and millionaires. They saved regardless of income level. They educated themselves about money. They did not let gender issues or setbacks derail them. But the most important pattern, They treated their careers as platforms, not destinations. They built skills and relationships that compounded over time. The process arbitrage is about shifting from linear income to exponential income. Linear income is your job. You work 40 hours, you get paid once. Exponential income comes from creating something once and selling it many times. A book, a course, a software tool, a rental property managed by someone else, a business that runs without your daily involvement. Research Source 8 distilled this into one powerful rule. Focus on one damn thing. Olympians do not study every sport. They study one sport for years. The compounding of effort over time is what produces breakthrough results. The writer from Source 6 wrote every day for years with 0 followers and 0 likes before reaching 500 million views. You cannot achieve that level of return by splitting your focus across a dozen priorities. Building your asset engine. So how does this actually work in practice? Let me walk through the analytical framework, not as a set of instructions, but as a model of how the wealthy structure their economic lives. First, you need to identify your knowledge asset. This is the thing you know better than most people. It could be your professional expertise from your 6-figure job. It could be a hobby you have mastered. It could be a problem you have solved in your own life. The writer from Source 6 started with a simple book about Twitter because that was what they knew. The key is to pick one thing and go deep. Second, the strategy relies on building an audience or distribution channel before you try to monetize. This is counterintuitive for most high earners. You are used to being paid for your time up front, but the asset model requires you to give value first and capture value later. The writer gave away hundreds of books for free. They focused on becoming known and developing their personal brand instead of making money. The speaker from Source 6 notes that your ability to monetize anything, books, courses, speaking, consulting, is tied to the strength of your brand. Third, you create a product that can be sold repeatedly with minimal additional effort. This is the asset. For the writer, it was a book sold on Amazon. For a consultant, it could be a recorded course. For a real estate agent, it could be a lead generation system that works even when you're not on the phone. The key is that the asset must have a low marginal cost of reproduction. Each additional sale should cost almost nothing to fulfill. Fourth, you reinvest the profits into more asset creation. The writer published multiple books over 12 years. Each book did better than the last because the audience grew and trust accumulated. This is the compounding effect that Research Source 8 calls the law of compounding effort. Finally, you maintain your income source while building the asset. Research Source 1 shows the mistake people make. They want to quit their job and jump into something new immediately. But the smarter approach is to keep the steady income while building the asset on the side. The writer kept their consulting business running while writing books. The successful moms from Source 5 maintained their demanding careers while building side income. The goal is not to escape your job tomorrow. The goal is to build an asset that makes your job optional over time. Research Source 4 reinforces this. You need a financial cushion. You need to know your numbers. You need to plan. The person who quit their job with $500,000 in savings did not do it on impulse. They spent years building that cushion. The same principle applies here. You are building a financial buffer of assets, not just savings, that eventually allows you to exit the time for money trap. Own your economic life. Let me close with a philosophical frame that ties all of this together. Because the process idea is not really about money. Money is just the scoreboard. The real game is about control over your time. Research Source 8 defines rich as time to be alone, time to do the things you love, time to spend with family, time to go down rabbit holes. Money is a gateway drug to time, and the tragedy of the 6-figure earner is that they have the gateway drug, but they never get the time. They trade their health, their relationships, and their freedom for a number on a paycheck, and then they wonder why they feel empty. I want you to look at the pattern across every research source we have discussed today. The people who escaped the trap all did the same thing. They questioned the story they were told. The writer questioned whether they needed a publisher. Successful moms questioned whether they had to follow traditional career paths. The career breaker questioned whether retirement had to happen at 65. The person who learned to become stupidly rich questioned whether formal education was the only path. They all realized that the system is not designed for your freedom. It is designed for your compliance. And once you see that, you cannot unsee it. Now here's where I need you to take action. Not a financial action, but a mental one. Drop a comment below and tell me about the one asset you know you should be building but keep putting off. Maybe it is a book, maybe it is a course, maybe it is a YouTube channel. Maybe it is a rental property. Whatever it is, admitting it publicly is the first step toward actually building it. And if you know someone who makes great money but is always stressed about money, share this video with them. They need to hear this message more than anyone, because the worst financial state is not poverty. It is high income with zero freedom. That is just expensive prison. Go look at your balance sheet with fresh eyes. Your future self will thank you.
Found this interesting? Subscribe to the channel. Give this video a like, share it out, and drop your questions or ideas in the comments. Until our next adventure.